Be the light in the crowd. Be the one that's been there on a camel's back, slow to anger, quick to laugh. Be more hard and less attack. Be the wheels, not the track. Be the wanderer that's coming back. Leave the past where it's at. Be more hard and less attack. Ever-growing, steadfast, and if need be, the world that's in the gap. Be the never turning back. Twice the heart any man could have. Be the wheel, not the track. Be the wonder that's coming back. Leave the past dry and where it's at. Be more hard and less attack. Be more hard and less attack. Be more hard and less attack.
So welcome to Collective's 5 p.m. Liturgy. I'm Heather, I'm the pastoral intern, and I'll be your host for the service this evening, locally here in DeLand, Florida, and globally at wearecollectivechurch.com, where you can subscribe and get connected. So we're gathering safely in person and live streaming. We respect your privacy, so if you'd rather not be on camera, the seats over here to my left won't be on the live stream. So welcome.
Good deal.
So liturgy means the work of the people. It's not my show, and tonight it's not Ben's show either, but but it's all of us working out our spiritual community together. Here to help us with this work as we work through tonight's work. Let me introduce our liturgists over on the couch. So Kenny is our online host in the room. If you're online, give a shout out to Kenny and let us know that you're with us tonight.
All right.
Participate in the service in the chat function. We're glad to have you here. Then we have Dan and Megan with us on the big couch tonight. Thank you both for being here. And we'll hear more from both of them later. And we have our artist in residence, Freddie Wilson, a musician. And we also have Andrew and, of course, Ben, who's, I guess he's a musician in residence too. So. For those of you that don't know, Ben is also our pastor, so otherwise known as my boss. So let's give him all a hand. So coffee's back, as I'm sure you've seen. So I think hopefully you've had a chance to grab a coffee and chat a little bit before the service. Our baristas tonight are Katie and Marianne. So give them a hand. And a big shout out, Katie's part of Collective Cares, and Collective Cares are covering our barista duties for this month of Pride Month, for this month of June. So a hand to Collective Cares for the people. Once they're done at the end of this month, if you're a family member or a friend who would like to be a barista, reach out to myself or to Ben, and get you on the schedule. Ben will be leading the conversation and be preaching. So, but the point is that we are all Collective Church. Dan, could you remind us what that means to us?
Sure. It's our community statement. We value highly the metaphor of journey. We're different people from different places and backgrounds, and representing an intergenerational community, and we've traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing this community includes a diverse group of people, from lifelong followers of Jesus to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, ask good questions, articulate and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, if you're gonna read it like that, I don't think we can just be silent afterwards, huh? Thank you, Dan. I'm Ben, for those of you that didn't catch that. Dan, we've been sort of following the story of your connection with your neighbors. We did a series a few months ago just called Neighborhood, asking the question, how, after the pandemic, what kind of practices do we need to sort of move relationally, viscerally? You went and did that with your neighbors, and tonight we're going to begin to discuss kindness and the need to see people as good. To begin just with, and even if you know that you can't see people as good or certain people as good, even that awareness is the beginning. And at least getting to the point of convincing yourself that what we need is to be able to see one another as good. So that's kind of where we're starting tonight. So Dan, tell us about this innate goodness. Tell us about basic kindness at this point in the journey of your sort of, your neighborhood project right now.
Right, well, with the all the political turmoil and the pandemic, I felt I was really distanced from my neighbors. And so I decided that it's my responsibility to be active, and what I would do is I would make a coffee cake or muffins, and I would take them to my neighbors. And it opened conversation with some of my neighbors. And there were benefits that I wasn't really aware of. Recently, I lost one of my neighbors who I was starting to get close to. Frank and his wife moved away on Tuesday back to Tennessee to be near his son. But before he left, he let me know he had a brother who is now his sister that he had not talked to for years. And it's because he couldn't see his former brother as a woman, and it bothered him. So we talked about the science, and he said that he was going to reach out to his brother once again. But I don't know if that had to do with my neighborliness, but I don't know whether he did or not, because he has moved away, and I haven't kept in contact with
Sowing
him.
seeds of reconciliation, though.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
And doing it arbitrarily, not doing it on purpose, that was wonderful.
Sure, yeah.
Then my neighbors across the street, Christy and Dave, she had a medical emergency, and because her family didn't want to leave her alone, she stayed with me for a few hours, for a couple of days. And so we got to know one another. And I'd already started to get to know them, but I came to love their little family. And what happened was she's become my FaceTime companion, because she has medical problems and I always want to check on her, and she's comfortable just calling me up anytime, night or day, and just going, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I wasn't expecting to have that kind of relationship with my neighbors. And it's been dynamite. It's changed me, and it's changed my neighbors. And what's interesting is something that I didn't include because I just found out about it. There's a neighborhood app that you can get where you can find out what's happening with your neighbors, and it's divided by neighborhood, and you can use it here in DeLand. I should have brought the information, but I just noticed it yesterday. Christy had run over and said, "Did you get your thing about neighbors?"
Right.
And so that worked out great, but it wasn't in my talk originally.
So here's kind of two of the main ideas that we're going to get into this month. We're focusing on the word kindness. One of the main ideas, and this is kind of what we're going to get into tonight, is that we're better than we think we are. We're better than the stories we consume. By and large, we consume stories that tell us we're bad, and I'm guilty of this also. I love true crime podcasts. Like, if you were to interview me, I'd be like, I'm sure there's serial killers everywhere, because that's my entertainment. The truth is, we're better than we fear we are. And we're also, so Dan, I wonder, did you find, and I think sort of going into this was coming out of both the pandemic and this most recent political season, where those binaries, those polarities couldn't have you, did you find that they were better than you feared they were?
They were much better than I ever thought they were. And they were kind, caring people. They were flawed, just like my friends.
Yeah.
But they were dynamite people that I really should have gotten to know a long time ago.
Can I ask you a really tough question?
Yeah.
Are they better than you feared they were because they changed their political affiliation?
No.
So wait, they're still good? They're okay?
They're still good.
And they still share some of the, yeah.
They're good people, and they watch out for their neighbors now. Now that they know their neighbors, they watch out for me. I probably benefit just as much as they do.
So if you're wondering what this has to do with the community statement, that word "we" that we say over and over and over in the community statement, right? We value highly, we this, we that, we. Who is we? Is it just the people that get together and say it? Just the people that get together and affirm it? No. We are collective with whomever we are practicing with. Not when we change them to be palatable to our tastes and preferences, but when we find a way to love and be kind to them where they are, as they are. Thanks a bunch. So we've said it, we've talked about what it looks like in our day-to-day life. Let's sing it together. Join us.
different paths. We're beautiful people with messy pasts, so have no fear, no judgment here. Whether you believe in Jesus or don't believe in anything, there's something you can teach us. You belong. No right, no wrong. Leaning into grace. Help us make a place with an open table where no one's turned away. We'll love without why, and no one has to hide. Finding God in people, sharing hearts as equals, where you are held in light. The good news is on your side. Life is full of mystery, and solidarity helps us to find some peace in the great unknown. You don't have to be alone, no. Leaning into grace. Help us make a place with an open table where no one's turned away. We'll love without why, and no one has to hide. Finding God in people, sharing hearts as equals. You are held in light. The good news is on your side.
Thanks to our resident musicians for not only for performing that, but of course Andrew in the middle there. He wrote that, so give him a big hand for that. So we are Collective Church. We, us in the room, and Kenny, who's online with us?
We've got Peter Saraceno chatting with us, and then we've also got other eyes on the chat, but not a lot of people chatting. So,
Dottie, if you're out there, we see you. Log on. All right.
Okay, so we've said it, we've sung it, we've connected online. So Kenny, how do we practice the community statement this week?
okay, so our weekly practice begins in your inbox. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to the email and check the box for the rundown. There you can pick which groups you want to see within the rundown, like collective yoga or collective cares. You can customize your dashboard for both communication and practice. The Faith Celebration Banquet will be held over Zoom this coming Tuesday, June 8th, from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We have included a link to Faith's website in this week's rundown, but for those of you who haven't checked the box for Faith in the rundown, but are curious to know more, you can check out their homepage at www.faithvolusia.org and click on the button that says Enter Celebration Banquet. Attendees will join together to tell Faith's story, celebrate this year's victories, and kick off their 2021 investment drive. If you want to know more about the banquet, how to invest in Faith, or just figure out what Faith is all about, you can connect with Freddie after the service.
Let me jump in just for a second. both because I can't ignore Steve Tonjes having the very best seat in the house. I'm sorry, if you guys online, I don't think can see it because we don't have the wide angle tonight, but Steve Tonjes rode his bike in here, his recliner bike, which is fantastic. Steve is one of the folks in the congregation who's kind of a spokesperson for our engagement with faith. Steve also happens to be the point of contact. If you don't get communication through the rundown via the email, if you don't do email, but you want to know what's going on, particularly this week with faith, please see Steve. You can't miss him. He's literally got a flag right over his head. So you can find him. Yeah, thanks, Kenny. Go on. Just wanted to make sure you guys could get with Steve if you needed him.
So the day after the Faith Banquet, Wednesday, June 9th, we'll be back at the Create Space next door for Art and Soul. You can help us spread kindness and join the snail mail revolution at the same time. We will challenge ourselves to embrace our creativity while making cards to send to friends and strangers alike. A variety of papers, tapes, stamps, markers, pens, and more will be made available. We only ask that you please reserve a free ticket by registering through the link in the Facebook event so we know how many of you will be joining us. And more than just an hour of fun on a Wednesday night, this month's Art and Soul is launching our kindness card campaign for the month of June. Collective will be issuing kindness card challenges throughout the month. We hope you'll be able to join us in bringing moments of light into the darkness by sending out cards near and far, as long as we have your physical address. The same way you would update your preferences in the rundown, you can update all of your personal information. Make sure your info is up to date. Ultimately, you need to remember that the point is the practice. From the rundown to weekly practice to giving, make your plan now to do what you might not want to do later on this week. Of course, if you need any help, I'm more than happy to help you right after the service over at the bar.
And we actually have a bar now, which is great.
With coffee. Awesome. Okay, so we just said your presence makes us who we are. And we want to have a frank conversation about showing up, which is always weird because we're in this tension of knowing that and affirming that every week at the beginning of the service, that our presence makes us who we are. We started as a misfit faith community. We started as a church for people who didn't want to go to church. And so we're also very aware of not wanting to pressure people to be present. How do you do that? I'm sure you guys have struggled with that with loved ones, with people in your family. How do you genuinely desire for people to be present without pressuring them to be present? Because the last thing that we want to do in trying to do this better is to resort to church guilt. Right? What we want instead is to share things with people that we love, to invite people, to include people, right? We use language like we want to open a way for people to be connected, to be involved. And now we're also having to deal with the awkwardness of coming out of COVID and sort of social safety and political anxiety and all these extra levels. And we know post-COVID that as much as Collective is always very intentionally maintained, at least for the last probably 6 years, right, Kenny? Since we got a grant and made this huge effort to connect with the online community. And Brooks, you were here for this. I mean, early on, it was literally that there was a group of like 15 of us, and it was such a unique community that we'd have people move away, and they'd be going to like LA, and Portland, and Asheville, and Colorado Springs. And they'd message us, and they're like, we can't find anything here. Like Collective, can we Skype in to be a part of this? That's how the online community started. And so we've always very intentionally made a way for people to stay connected and to engage online. We also know, and this is tough, and this is tough to name and to admit coming out of the pandemic, but this is a part of spiritual growth, is telling the truth about how things are. We also know that the way that we gather in person, the way that we create space to be together, the way that we curate these conversations, sensitive conversations, the way that we intentionally host dialogues that we know will not end with resolution, but instead with growth, with disruption, in fact. We know, part of what we've realized is we have to get this cocktail right here in the room in order to really be able to share it with people online. To be able to actually share that community more broadly than what's going on in the room, we first have to get that cocktail right in the room. So what does that mean in terms of showing up?
Well, you know, I was thinking about some of the things that Jesus said in Scripture. And
You're such an intern.
Because being an intern, even though it's collective, they make me look at Scripture. And you know, we share this meal every week here. And Jesus didn't say, if you ever gather together in my name, I'll be there. He said, when two or more people gather together in my name, I'll be there. Not if, when. And you know, so much of what I get personally from Collective is from in this room. It's from the discussions we have before the collective service starts, the discussions we have when we're having coffee, the discussions we're having afterwards when we're having coffee, you know, which you can't do online because the service ends at 6 or whatever, and it's done. So, you know, that's what I get from it. And I know those of you that have been here for a while, I know that you remember that community sense, the feeling that we had on a Sunday evening when we were over in Alabama, and when we were at the table graciously hosted by the Reeds, and now when we were in here before COVID happened. Let's get that back.
Yeah, and so, I mean, practically speaking, what we need is for people who are both vaccinated and willing to gather safely, and I trust that you're adults and you know what that means. Those of you who have been saying, and I get it, I've told all of you, if I haven't told you, I'll tell you now, and you can record it forever and ever. There are plenty of Sundays where I wouldn't be here if I wasn't getting paid, okay? I mean, that's the truth, even for pastors. But we need to commit to ways of being together. And if you're one of those people who throughout the pandemic was like, I just can't do the online church thing, you know, it's just not the same, I don't feel it. If we ever get back, right, if you were one of those people, like, if we ever get back, I'll go back to church. This is the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so Heather is going to be preaching next week. And we want to just appeal to you to come and support Heather, right?
So I invite you to come and sit in the peanut gallery and throw things. You can't do that online, so you have to be here.
Yes, yeah, you can't throw things online. But you can make snide comments to Kenny, and he'll share them for sure. This is, again, in the spirit of just sharing and honesty, and we're going to get more into this in the month of July and help explain things. But part of what you need to know is that our ongoing funding is a question of impact. And in order to be a church that serves people, there have to be people. And we trust, look, it's not like we haven't been worried in the last few years about money, but we trust that money will follow people, right? If we're doing the things that we're supposed to be doing, particularly serving people, not asking how can we get what we want, but if we're really serving people, the money will follow that. And the bottom line is we need people to show up while we're bouncing back. We need that momentum, again, not in a church guilt way, but again, to remind us what it feels like when there are people who are moving in the same direction, and I don't just mean people filling a room. I mean the sense of moving in the same direction when we sit silently together. I mean the sense of moving in the same direction when we cry together about youth incarceration and about the lack of affordable housing in our community. Those kinds of moving in the same direction. So rather than vague church guilt, we're going to give you some specifics. Again, please come to Heather's sermon next week. Also, I want to let you guys know, and this is, Megan and I are going to chat in just a second. How long have you been Methodist or in the Methodist church, roughly?
Well, forgot to turn myself on.
Welcome to Collective.
I've been a member of the Methodist church my entire life.
So you were born into it, right?
I was born into it. I was a pastor's wife for 10 years, I believe.
God bless you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I am not sorry to be missing conference.
Yeah,
next
no.
week.
Me either. It's online. Wink. I'm going to attend for sure.
But but I've been involved with Collective now for 7 years,
Yeah.
8 years, something,
Yeah.
however long that Collective's been affiliated with the Methodist Church.
So just gut reaction. Openly transgender candidate in the United Methodist Church, openly transgender intern preaching in a Methodist church. Anything you ever thought you'd see in the Methodist church?
Anything I what?
Anything you ever thought you'd see in the Methodist church as somebody growing up in the Methodist church?
No, not anything I'd ever thought I would see. I'm thrilled. I feel like we're finally making some progress moving forward.
Yeah. So I don't know how to put this eloquently.
I think what you mean to say is no pressure.
No, yeah. This is what I want to say. The last few years have been rough, right? Nobody would argue with that. And we know that we fuck up. We do. We fuck up all the time. We know that we hurt people. We don't mean to. We know that there are, maybe we've got as much wreckage behind us as we do fruit on the vine sometimes, because growing up is really hard. And we're not willing to lie about it. And that makes it even harder to be honest about our stuff. And even with everything that's gone sideways in the last 3 or 4 years, I'm really proud of the way that we're shaping the world, I don't know if without Collective, the United Methodist Church would be pushing itself to have openly transgender candidates at this point. And so, yeah, I think, there's been a lot of stuff that we haven't gotten right, and I think that's a part of how progress happens. So we're thrilled that you're with us. We will all be here to support you next week, and we'll bring people, right? Yeah. I'm not going to be here, but you guys should definitely be here.
You'll be watching online.
Yes, I will be watching online for sure. Kenny?
So our relationship with Jenny Beth and the Create Space in the back is really important to us. And we've got Art and Soul coming up this coming Wednesday. So I will just want to push that again. Please come. Please reserve your spot. It's a really fun time. Some of you that are in the room now were in the room with us doing the galaxy painting last month, and that was a really great time. So we really want to extend that opportunity to you. So please come and support us and support Jenny Beth.
Absolutely. And Ashley's been helping Heather and I and sort of our teams and team leaders get organized. And Heather's going to be organizing those volunteers, and so I'm authorizing you. She's agreed. Pester her for a place to serve this summer, right? Simple stuff. We need people to open and close the building. We need baristas, cleaners, kids helpers. Tonight, Miss Kelly had to call in, so we don't have anybody for kids, for childcare. We need help as liturgists. We need people to help with the Eucharist. There's a ton of places, and yeah, I know they're like little menial kind of tasky jobs. I get it, and I'm not saying do it forever, but in the short term, make yourself responsible to serve the community so that you'll show up. Make yourself responsible and help Heather and I find you a place to serve. And maybe if you're not, and that's fine. We know that there are people who are not there. Maybe you're like, I swore I'd never do church again, so just being in the room, or just signing in online, that's as much as I want to do. But maybe you can check in on Facebook. Maybe you can share an event. Maybe you can comment, and I'm not saying even comment on the sermon. Comment on the music, comment on Mary Oliver poetry, whatever it is. Engage, because the more you like, the more you share, the more you engage, people in your life are going to know that this is a part of what makes you you, and ultimately that's the best marketing we can do. We don't want them to see an ad. We want them to see you engaging in this community and it making a difference for you. That's the very best marketing we can have. What else? Maybe Collective Cares?
Yeah, so ask Dan and Rachel how you can best serve Collective Cares. Collective Cares is our LGBT group that Dan runs, and it's not what's in it for you. But it's how you can serve them.
Yeah.
I'm sure all the work that Dan has done has benefited him just as much as it has benefited other people that he's been serving, and that's how service works. When you serve, you benefit from it hugely, and don't be afraid to try some new things out. If you've never served coffee before, give it a shot. If you don't like it, don't do it again. There's plenty of. We're not just going to throw you in. We're not going to say, okay, well, you volunteered for this, so you better make sure it's done. We're going to support you. We're going to help you. We're going to show you how everything's done. If you like it, run with it. If you don't, if that's not the place where you're being called to serve, then move somewhere. Then do something else, or do nothing, or please don't do nothing. But
keep asking, and we'll find you a place.
Find the chair that's most comfortable for you. That's all we ask. Find the chair that's most comfortable for you, and serve from that chair.
I like that. All right, Kenny, one more.
So I don't know if you guys have met our event coordinator, Jamie O'Connell, but she is lovely. I think that you guys should reach out to her and ask how you can help market the theater to get some cash flowing to the church. I actually had someone reach out to me a week or two ago asking if Rotaract could rent the space, and that was pretty there was multiple other people getting those types of offers in through. So if you know anybody that wants to have a wedding somewhere or has a particular organization that needs to have a place to meet, refer them to her.
Yes.
Do we have her business cards here?
We don't have them yet. That's what I was going to say. We're going to do our part, which is to make that much easier for you guys. So we're going to get a stack of Jamie's business cards that'll be here. We're also going to get a streamlined way we'll be able to tell you where you can either send people directly to a simple website, to the Facebook page. But probably the best thing to do is we'll invite Jamie to come be a guest. We'll have you guys meet her. But so many of you guys just naturally have been like, hey, somebody was asking me if the theater, blah, blah, blah. And those are pivoting into us actually starting to book things. But the more the better. So if you guys have that on your mind as you're moving through town and you see opportunities, that would be awesome as well. And finally, and I shudder to say this, I'll only say it because Dave is not in the room, but you can ask Dave how you might be helpful with a building project on the second floor. I think we've got permits submitted, so we are eventually going to move on that. I believe there will be painting days that Dave will be organizing. We may be laying floor. I see Kara here, so awesome. Kara lays tile for sure. So the question is, and I think Heather did a great job of saying this, how is it that you feel called to show up this summer? And I'm not talking long term, right? Our big horizon here as a congregation is 6 months. I'm not even talking about that. How can you be responsible to show up and do something beneficial for this congregation this summer, just in the next 3 months? What a great question to sort of let echo in our hearts as we sit in silence together. And I want to start by asking you to close your eyes. Yeah, Bill.
Ben, I just wanted to share, Joy and I are opening our home starting Tuesday night, the 15th, for a community group. Yes. It's going to be based on St. Hildegard of Bingen. For those of you who I'm sure never heard of her, she was probably one of the first women's livers that wrote a book. Back in the Middle Ages, she was a force to be reckoned with. She was a mystic, a contemplative, a shaman, and she kicked ass on some popes in a serious way. And she really woke people up to the greenness and the importance of reverencing the earth. All issues that we still need to deal with today. And so Matthew Fox is going to be our host and teaching about her online. He's brilliant. He's a prophet to the church. And we're open to have anyone come. And Ben has my address, and that'll be going out, I guess.
Yes, we're gonna. We didn't get it in the rundown this week because it came late, so we're probably gonna throw it on a Facebook post probably tomorrow and Tuesday for that first week, and then we'll try to get it in the rundown next week. If you couldn't hear, probably still can't. I've somehow tied this cable around this arm inside my shirt. It's like a magic show, except I've rendered this arm unusable. So if you missed what Bill said, there's this great sort of mystic and teacher called Matthew Fox who's going to be teaching about St. Hildegard of Bingen? Bingen?
Yeah, Bingen.
Anyway, she's a badass who challenged popes. And it comes through the Winter Park group, right? Gladdening Light. It's like connected. Is it connected with that group at all? Oh, wow. So anyway, you should check. It's what, 8 weeks? 7 weeks?
Yeah, 8 weeks, 7 weeks.
Okay.
It will be Tuesday nights, 8 p.m.
And what should they expect? It's probably going to be a video lecture and then some discussion.
The lecture will be live. We'll be able to ask questions.
Awesome.
And it's practical to today in your spiritual life.
Fantastic. So that is going to be a community group that Collective is going to offer. It will be hosted at Bill's house. How awesome is this? We get to host community groups in houses again. Yay. So I'll get with Bill and we'll get the details of that and make it available on Facebook tomorrow.
And we'll put it on the rundown later.
Yes, and it'll go on the rundown on Wednesday, but that'll be after the first meeting, which is this Tuesday night.
The first meeting is the 15th.
Oh, so we're going to get it in time.
Okay, so.
Fantastic. So don't go to Bill's house this Tuesday unless you just really. It's got a lovely pool, lots of animals. Never mind, Joy's hosting. She's excited.
Yeah.
All right, let's sit quietly together. There's such good life and energy. We're going to sound the singing bowl. We're going to sit, and we're going to ask you to join us for just a few minutes and gently returning to your attention. Whether for you that's centering, prayer, shared silence, meditation, worship, we know that the experience will be that our minds will wander. And so we're invited to continue to come back to our breath. No judgment, just notice, and gently, gently to your breath. Those online, feel free to use the drone footage as best serves your sense of quietness, solitude, and survey the inner landscape. May silence allow us to contemplate what we want the ceremony to accomplish for us this evening. Humility, spiritual rebirth, strength for what lies ahead. Relax. It's all right. We'll sit silently for about 3 minutes. Take off my fancy sheet. Yeah, I'll try not to. So we've just finished a month on wonder. In the working definition we're using, we borrowed from Barbara Brown Taylor, is that we're not in charge, and it's wonderful. It's the combination of those two things, the acknowledgement that we're not in control, and the choice to experience it as wonderful, rather than maybe some other things. Kenny sent me this slide this week. Ma'am, what is it that keeps you going? She says, my desire to crush my enemies and my sense of wonder. But what we want to say again, right, real talk, is that maybe, a 3-week series on wonder didn't do it. Maybe, like me, you're not in charge and it still feels like shit most of the time. Sometimes it makes us want to crush our enemies. And I think that's why we keep coming here. And we keep saying it to each other. We keep practicing it. Because it doesn't take just the one time or even after 3 weeks. If we did a mediocre series on wonder for 3 weeks and you guys were immediately like, man, I can't turn off the wonder. It's like I'm walking around with acid glasses and the world is just magic melting all the time. We don't expect everyone to master a life of wonder. We want to give our lives a little bit more shape each week. We want to be a little bit more like, bless you, a little bit more like the kind of person who could not be in charge and be okay with it. That's kind of where we're starting. And we're aiming for wonder. And the same is true for our theme for this month, which is kindness. We've all heard probably too many sermons about it's good to be good and it's nice to be nice. Eloquent sort of exhortations. And it becomes clear that there's more time spent on the beauty of the words than the validity of the ideas and practices. This is true for me because I'm the preacher in a congregation who admits that this stuff doesn't always work. We say, even as we preach, that truth is porous and it's gentle and it's compassionate, or it's not truth. But that also means that we give up on the idea and we have to then grieve the idea that there's a magic prayer or a magic pill or a magic fix or a belief that will do it for you. There isn't. There isn't. So instead of more, let's be kind because the Bible says so, and doggone it, we're in the South and it's polite. I want to take a different tack, and just for a second tonight, I want to open with what the data says, and this is what we'll do for the next 4 weeks, and basically ask, is the data about kindness, is it echoed or is it challenged by our faith tradition, by some of our spirituality? So this guy, Rudolf Bregman, wrote a fantastic and thorough book on just this called Humankind, and he basically brings together evidence from history, social sciences, clinical research, and the natural sciences to make a compelling argument that for the most part, people are actually pretty good and altruistic. I'm gonna let you sit with that for a second. Because this is counter to so many of the philosophies that form the basis and the biases of our culture and our institutions. They promote the idea that human beings are inherently selfish and unruly. That it's a dog-eat-dog world, eye for an eye, fire with fire, and that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Bregman writes this. I'm not going to get into the actual data tonight. I'm going to leave it for Heather, but I want to summarize some. So Bregman writes this. He says, we often assume that during times of crisis, the veneer that we call civilization cracks, and that people reveal their true selves, and that we really become quite horrible versions of ourselves. But all the evidence of sociology that we have compiled show that especially in times of crisis, we show our best selves. And we get this explosion of altruism and cooperation. Now, let me add one tiny caveat, because I think Michelle's brain's about to explode. This was all published before 2020. Yes, right. So just a teeny tiny asterisk on the research. So this is his quote. And I want to leave this up. I want to pause and just ask, has this been the experience of our congregation? Jess?
Yes.
Okay.
It has been. And even in 2020, I had an example of this. We were part of the tornado that happened.
Yes.
And all of our neighbors came out the moment the tornado had ended. And everybody was helping each other
Yep.
piece back together. Like, are you okay?
Yeah.
a lot of debris in our yard. We were all putting the debris back where it needed to be in the trash.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and everybody, like the whole neighborhood just got together. It was brilliant.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, we've shared those stories over time. Like, what's the what's the pivotal moment that connected you to the life of Collective Church? And in my mind, I'm like, oh man, it's going to be that sermon from that series where I finally really said it clearly and they understood it. And they're always like, oh, it's Jim Kane sawing things on my roof in sandals after the hurricane. And it's like that, and that's it, right? That's what connects us. That's what binds us. And we're going to talk in July about help. About asking for help. What does it mean to be people not only who ask for help, but who become better by asking for help? All this stuff tying together. So, show of hands, how many of you, thank you, Jess. Anybody else want to share? This was your experience or no? Yeah, Jay.
It's generally been my experience throughout my whole life.
That crisis has revealed the goodness of people.
People just, not just crises, but general situations. I think that, and maybe I'm just blessed or lucky or whatever, but the vast majority of my interactions with people, I mean, a lot of people worry about bad things that could happen, and so, a few months or a couple years ago, I would be out riding my motorcycle, and I said, well, you really ought to take a cell phone with you. What's going to happen? If you break down, so I don't have a cell phone. I break down. I go up either 1792 up around Pearson area, stick my thumb out in the air, get a ride from a guy who decides, oh, well, you're not that far off my route to drop you off at your house.
Wow.
And black guy.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's the kind of thing that has happened, that's happened to me. We were trying to camp, but we couldn't find a place to camp one time. And I asked a cop, there was a cop going by, and I said, do you know of any place we can pitch our tent? He said, sure, pitch it in the city park.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was Ozona, Texas. I mean, this is the kind of thing that has happened my whole life.
I just want to point out, I think this is so funny because I think part of those of us who have been in church long enough to have kind of deconstructed and rejected a lot of it, one of the things that I think is so funny is Jay mentioning how, my God, I just totally lost my thought. Gone. Like that. Man.
So Jay was talking about.
I was thinking about our critique of like supernatural religion. You get people, the difference between like faith in something versus faithfulness. You have people who will talk to their blue in the face about how much faith they have that God's going to take care of them. Jay doesn't believe in any of it, but he goes for a ride on his bike without his cell phone. Right? That's practice. That's faithfulness. He goes out and he's like, I'm just going to trust in the kindness of strangers. Practical faith. He's not praying about it, but he goes for a ride without a phone. Man.
If I need, and the other thing is, I know if I really need a phone, there have been a couple of times I walk up to somebody and say, I really need a cell phone. Can you borrow your cell phone for a minute? And I've never been turned down.
Wow. Awesome. So how many of you guys, just in general, I'm wanting you to think through, maybe the last 18 months of your life. Have hard times revealed that you're better than you thought you were? Or have they revealed that you're worse than you thought you were? And I know that those are value-based comments, but you know what I'm asking. You know the way you feel about yourself. Have they revealed a hidden horrible self, or have they revealed that there's more altruism and cooperation and goodness in yourself maybe than you realized? It's probably an important question, right? Part of what we're asking when we come here every week is, are the things that we're saying and celebrating and learning and practicing making us more loving? If they're not, we shouldn't keep doing it.
And it's difficult to answer that one because we're conditioned so much in society these days to be humble and not sit there telling everybody how magnanimous we are and how helpful we are and how
pretty good.
And how
I'm doing pretty
great
good.
Since we came to Collective Church, I was terrible, and now look at me, I'm fabulous.
Right. Yeah.
We understand if you're not.
Yeah, I think, and I don't think,
but,
I don't think it's necessarily. That's a good point. I don't know that it's necessarily to report or to share. I think it's important that you have the experience of asking yourself that question. Yeah. What are hard? Maybe it's more of an open question. What are hard times revealing in me? You know, what have going through hard times revealed about my character, about the way that I deal with things when they're hard? And I ask because I think we have to acknowledge, I think we have to accept that if that is the norm, right, that there are times where even in the church, we are the exception, right? We have seen, especially in the last 18 months, so many people sort of implode or fall out or break with family or choose division or become estranged from people or kind of break and dissolve relationships, and me among them. I mean, probably me more responsibly than most because of my part in this. People in this community, we can say people have left collective angry and hurt and neglected and confused and exhausted. Yeah, predictably, because we, every one of us, including and especially me, are people. And we've come through hard times, and they reveal some things. And so we have to admit, yeah, at times we as a church haven't been our best selves. And it does feel at times around here, like many of you have said this, either directly or indirectly, that it feels during times of crisis like maybe the veneer that we called collective has cracked, and it's revealed some stuff that we're certainly not excited or proud of. All of this to say, I am convinced by what I read in the book, in this book, Humankind, and I think it confirms what I already was convinced of by the Christian tradition, and I think by really the deeper well of human goodness, just my ability to look in somebody's eyes and have faith in that. The point is, I wanted to say at the beginning of this, because I think anytime you get really cool, compelling new research and evidence and stuff like that, what do, especially as sort of Western man? We grab it and we weaponize it, which is to say, how can I take this and turn it towards other people for assessment and analysis? The point is, I want us to not spend the month on kindness thinking about how we would love to make all of the extremists and Capitol rioters and racists and white nationalists kinder people. I don't want us to miss that this series is for us to sort out our decision, and it has to be a decision. I'm not asking you to come up and profess your faith at the altar in Jesus Christ, but you have to make a decision to practice being kind, even to the ones we say we love. It's about impacting the world for sure, but it has to begin with our ability to be kind to the people in front of us. And so the data shows that these contributions from biology and archaeology debunk the idea that the only way to the top of the food chain was through violence and domination. In fact, in Bregman's research, he shows that the human race has actually been shaped by what he calls survival of the friendliest. Which means that for millennia, it was actually the friendliest among us who had the most kids. So they had the biggest chance to pass on their genes to the next generation. This is how evolution works. We actually had to get along to build communities that could protect one another, that could enhance one another, that could cooperate with one another. But Bregman admits how hard this is to accept this universal rule. Why do we find this so hard to accept, that people are good? He goes on to say, because we're also the cruelest species. We do things that other animals just don't do. Think about wars, ethnic cleansing, racism, discrimination, you name it. I mean, it's been true. We do this. And we're back at collective, right? Both of these things are true at the same time. Both of these things are true at the same time. The reason our brain won't accept it is because our brain wants binary, wants one or the other. Your brain won't accept this because it isn't all true at the same time. And you can think about it like this. Your brain is actually right. The nuances here, they're both true all the time. They're both true all the time. We're basically good and kind, and we're uniquely horrible. I know it took me a second to get there. I could see eyes glazing over. But I needed to get there to summarize. We are basically good and kind. And as far as we know in the universe, we're uniquely horrible. Even kids. And what we're saying is, what we're doing when we talk about practice, we're intentionally trying not to be horrible. Check out the community statement, check out the song Love Without Why. And so we're practicing leaning into basic kindness. And it has to begin with honesty about this contradiction that we're both at the same time. That's life, that's reality, that's certainly the Christian faith. And I think maybe it's one of the hardest things to wrap our minds around spiritually and theologically, that people can be mostly so good and yet have such potential to do harm. And we're going to explore that in the coming weeks, and you'll get into more of that data next week. And I'm telling you, though, even though this is hard, and I know it's hard, and we've said regularly recently, especially that things that help us to grow spiritually are hard, but it restores your faith in humanity, and I think we could all use some hope right now. Unfortunately, the positive views of personhood that you find in organized religion can be rare. It sometimes seems that religion thrives on sort of the same fear of our neighbor and stuff as the sort of the news and capitalism, and it causes us to doubt ourselves and our neighbor and God. And certainly in Christianity, but in many faith traditions where people choose to corrupt a good message for personal gain, faith can sometimes evolve into a power structure and an institution that's goal is to self-perpetuate. We just have to kind of keep doing it. And so then it can't help but take a defensive posture. And this is honestly some of what we've been through in the last couple of years dealing with property and money, is how do we just survive? Which is the question of how do we self-perpetuate? We've been there, and we've been there long enough to know it's poison. And so we have to learn how to live and hold ourselves differently. Still this year, after all the negative of the past year, we want to embrace the reality that we are of a good and loving God as people with good and loving hearts. So we want to focus on bringing out the best in ourselves and restoring faith in our neighbors. So we've got to start with the question of basic human goodness. Are people basically good or basically bad? And how does this impact our ability to practice kindness? So you guys are going to actually have this conversation right now, live in the room, around the tables, if you like. There's going to be the house rules, no me monsters. We're going to chat for a few minutes. We'll get some feedback, and then we'll close up and do the Eucharist. How's that sound? So here's the questions. Good or bad, we're talking basic human understanding. More importantly, because we could debate theologically and existentially whether or not people are good or bad. Does that impact our ability to practice kindness? So we got to move it out of our head and into our hands. How does that affect our ability to practice kindness? In the room and online, if you're online, chat with Kenny about what you're thinking. House rules apply, no me monsters. Everybody gets a chance to share, and you don't have to share. So if you don't want to be in a discussion group, feel free to reflect on your own. We are going to go a little late tonight. That's fine. Thanks to the kids for being awesome. So take about 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll come back and chat. What time is it?
6:03.
I don't think he's trying to make her nervous, but I do think that.
I think you should serve our people that are on martinis for martini hour.
Well, ask Heather.
Yeah, change from coffee to martinis. Although I like just olive soaked in vodka.
Benediction for next week.
Okay.
It's not very.
Oh, Mary Oliver's not this week either.
And then what happened was, it turned out to be good for me. You know what? There are times when conflict, I think that's the whole place I use it. And it's ridiculous because there's a cost. Don't get but there's another
I've had a lot of times where
the opportunity arises
very, very
many years ago.
I mean, you get it because I consume it 24/7. It was like I had to get through, the anxiety of dealing with or dealing with real life through COVID. And by going through that anxiety, feeling the stress, and allowing myself to be true to myself, and come through to another place where the people have a blanket over their head, they can find and that doesn't make them feel good. Choose to take that blanket and use it like it was to be, I would say. They chose the bad place. Initially, I believe it. But by the same time, we had certain point in time, we changed certain things.
Just take your time.
And that place now where I realize that there are a lot of people, and still to this day, walking around,
How are you doing?
allowing themselves to be gaslighted, and believing lies that don't exist, and denying reality, and they keep choosing that over and over again, and that is making them react in a certain way.
I guess to give them kitty and doggy like things. But you can see it all lined up. Yeah, and it just made me feel good that I finally recognized she didn't need my help. She needed my time.
I just have Dottie and Peter. Dottie and Peter. Peter says hi, and he misses you a lot. I told him he needs to visit. Yeah. It's interesting. Last week we only had 2 people. We only had 7 people, but only 2 people talking. I'm happy to have more eyes on.
All right, thank you guys. Sounds like you all are up to some good stuff, which is one of the things I have missed. What do we think? Well, first of all, let's ask a bigger question. Do we think it matters whether we think people are basically good or bad? How many of you think it matters, like it's essential that we feel one way or another about people? Okay, so Jay wants to have an opinion on it. How many of you think it's possible for us to not feel one way or another? Like, do we get to choose not to feel one way or another? We can just be indifferent and not think people are good or bad? That's where most of us want to land, apparently. Cool, everybody's got a story. So practically speaking, what are some of the hang-ups with how we feel about people and that impact on our practice of kindness? Sharon.
It's easier to be kind to people that we judge to be good.
Right.
It's harder to be kind to people that we judge to be bad. If, for me, to remove the judgment and say, what kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to be a kind person? Or do I want to be judgmental and make distinctions? Well, they deserve it, they don't. Kind of takes away the power of the judging part and reminds me that this isn't necessarily about them, it's also about me and what kind of person I want to be.
Man,
It's not easy.
No, well, and I was going to say that just the place you started is already so many light years ahead of where I am. If you didn't hear it, man, the ability just to start with the self-reflection, not, the ability to acknowledge, that the choice is not to do something to someone or not to do it. The choice is, what kind of person am I? And I think that just as a starting point to have the distinction between like, should I do this for another person or should I not do it for them, are two totally different questions from, is this the kind of person that I want to be? Thank you. Yeah, that's a better starting point than I had. Mary.
That just sparked a thought in my head, a quote from Men in Black, where Kay is talking to the movie about, person versus people. A person, he finds generally smart.
Yes.
People as a whole,
Ooh.
not so much.
Oh.
You can find that here. A person, you can find them, basically good or basically bad either way.
Yeah.
But people as a whole, what would you consider that?
Ooh, great distinction. So yeah, are we when we're applying this, are we applying it en masse to people? Are we saying, yeah, is the individual good, but when we get in groups, maybe we tend to get rowdy? Yeah, Katie.
I know for me, like I cannot be friends with somebody or like even want to talk to somebody if they're like homophobic, because I have a lot of trans and gay friends myself.
Yeah.
And I love them all dearly. And so for the thought of me being friends with somebody homophobic is just absolutely a no-no, because they are actively, their views are harmful towards like the people that I love and appreciate.
Yes.
That for me is just, it's a deal breaker.
Okay. Time out. We need to slow. Yes, we're going to get there. We need to slow this down. I don't know if we're going to get to the sermon, but this is really important. The other side of this, there is a choice to practice kindness. Part of what we're talking about in terms of how we feel about people also relates to safety and boundaries. These are not separate conversations. So we have to sit side by side. We have to let a choice to be kind and your gut to be safe, and your ability to say, this is a hard boundary because it makes me feel unsafe. Yes. It's complicated. And again, these are both happening at the same time. That's part of the difficulty of these sort of what seem like contradictions. We can have boundaries. We can choose not to associate with people that pose harm to us, and we can have chosen to practice kindness. not one or the other. That's the difficulty of spiritual practice. So thank you. Do you want to add anything to that? I think that's... Kenny, we got people online, and then we're going to come back to
So I've
Heather.
got a couple things I want to share from people that are online. So Dottie says, how can I believe in goodness within me if I cannot believe that it is in others? I am not unique or special. Whatever God is comes through us. We can tap into it or choose not to, but I can't believe that there is no goodness in others.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Dottie.
And Peter shared, I think it comes down to the outcome and one's interpretation. We're only able to be responsible for our own choices, and when other people act in ways that we can't accept, we can only choose our next move. Sometimes it makes me want to be more kind, and sometimes it makes me want to be less kind.
I like it. Honest, clear. Yeah. Well, and that's, I think, part of the deception of even creating a system of good, bad, and value judgment is you have to pretend that you can freeze the frame on somebody. You know, are they good or bad? You know, when in that moment? Because like that parable. You know, it's which day. You know, I'm good and horrible. It just depends which day or which hour. Dan and then Heather.
Can I say something about what Katie said?
Yes.
It's because I've run into people that were previously homophobic. And what happens is when you put a face on somebody who is trans, somebody who is gay, somebody who's lesbian, somebody who's bisexual, somebody who's non-binary, when you put a face on it, those people suddenly change.
Yeah.
And the thing that's important is, people don't put enough value in coming out. It's easier for them to play it safe. It's important to come out because when a person puts a face and a heart to a person, it changes them.
Yeah.
And it's important that if somebody's homophobic, that you listen to them. Oftentimes they're homophobic simply because they think they don't know anybody who's part of the LGBTQ community. Or at least if they've seen them, all they've seen is RuPaul's Drag Race, where somebody's throwing shade at somebody and showing a negative image. They don't see the person who lives next door.
Right.
They don't see the person that's teaching their children. They don't see those, they've defined them so outside of reality that it's important that they see us, as we are, and that we see them as they are, that maybe there's something in their past that brought about the way that they feel, but that doesn't mean they can't change, and that doesn't mean that we can't change either.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Sure.
Well said.
Let me add a caveat to that, Dan. I don't want to disagree with what you said, but one of the things that I think is very important is if there's anybody here or anybody online that is not out as any of the LGBT groups, it's very important that you don't come out because you feel you have to help the LGBT community. That is something that is
Right.
that is something that that you must wait until you are ready to, because otherwise that can be harmful. So, and I know that Dan did not mean to put the responsibility on those that are not out to come out to help the rest of the community, because I know Dan, and that's not what he meant.
That's right.
But just in case there was any confusion over that, please do that.
But
please
to
do
say,
that safely.
and to say ultimately that the thing that will most humanize the conversation is a person, is to have a relationship with someone, especially when it's a subject or a topic where there's like a decision that's been made without a relationship. And I think then you can help, and that's one of the reasons I was really glad that we got to talk to you tonight, Dan, is, we're in Pride Month. We're very clearly celebrating how out Collective is for the LGBTQ community. If you haven't gotten a chance to see our Pride bars out front, we're celebrating Collective Cares doing the barista thing, and the story about your practice of kindness and neighborliness with your neighbors doesn't have anything to do with the fact that you're a gay guy. right? It's not because you were a gay Christian in your neighbor. Well, okay, so Heather thinks maybe. But my point is, I think a lot of people early on were like, oh, we don't want to come to Collective because we don't want to go to a gay church. And part of what we're trying to say is, part of what makes it great is that it's open and affirming to the LGBTQ community, but it's not as if the gay church thing is the identity, right? You're a guy who's doing all of this different stuff in a congregation that's open and affirming.
It's one of the reasons why I stopped going to an exclusively gay church.
Yeah.
It's because I wanted to feel a sense of community and a sense of belonging. And I felt like doing that devalues humanity.
Yeah.
It means I go out there and I go exclusively to an isolated gay church because I don't trust anyone. And I don't feel that anymore. I feel like I want to know everybody. And you can't do that when you isolate yourself in the gay community alone.
Well, and I think, again, this is such a good, we just keep saying the same thing in different beautiful ways, but it's, again, where you freeze the frame. There are a lot of people in the gay community for whom they need to go to exclusively gay church because the trauma of having gone to a conservative church so harmed them that they don't feel safe, and that's a boundary for them, to not be around anybody that's not a part of the gay community. And you fast forward a little bit and you freeze the frame for Dan at this point in his life, and it's a very different experience, and maybe both of those are needed. But the conversation about an awareness and not forcing somebody to be in one or the other, but at least being aware about what we have to offer.
In 1971, when I came out, you would not walk into a church and tell somebody you were gay. And that's when I discovered MCC, and read Troy Perry's book, The Lord is My Shepherd and He Knows I'm Gay. Could there be more cliche? But there you go. But I didn't believe a lot of the things that he believed. And I didn't need to, though.
Right.
But it gave me a place to go.
Yeah.
But it wasn't long before I felt isolated. It took me about 10 years to feel isolated.
Well, so look, this is such a good case study, though, right? Because we've got a group of people who, because probably they've been harmed in a church, they've created a story in which MCC, all queer church, is good, and the other churches are bad. And you've got this good, bad again. But here comes Dan, growing at this point in your life where you go, okay, the pool of people we've called good is not big enough anymore. I think maybe there's good people not just in the queer community, but in the broader church that can accept LGBTQ people. So I think, these are stages. It's a part of the journey. It's not, right or wrong, good or bad. It's kind of where we are. All right, we got to do this. Megan, let's get into Genesis. My goodness.
I'm glad you stopped talking because otherwise I'm going to have to rewrite my sermon for next week.
Yes, true. Sorry, go. I'm done. We're basically going to close with a text, and Megan and I are going to have a quick conversation, I promise.
Genesis 1:24 to 2:2. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that he had done, and he rested.
You guys should hear the full one. It's even longer. Thank you, Megan. Megan, we said you've been around the church, the Bible, church work way too long, and it is just beat the hell out of your family. I'm wondering, because of all that history, have the creation stories been used to tell you that you were bad, or were they a source of pointing to goodness, or were they both?
I think a little bit of both. I think that the church does, in some ways, use the creation stories as a way to teach the sinfulness of humanity.
Yeah.
We're taught the creation stories at such a young age, but because we're so young, they're taught at a very surface level.
Yeah.
And we're taught, okay, Adam and Eve, God created this beautiful place. Adam and Eve screwed up. They did something bad. They got kicked out, and now we're all still being punished for it.
Yeah.
So.
And we're still bad, to your
And
point.
we're still bad.
Yes.
But I think that a lot of people never grow beyond that. They never think any further than that, and therefore, in their mind, okay, if I'm already bad, if I'm a sinner, why bother trying? Why be nice to other people? Why do I need to bother?
Yeah.
Why continue going to church if all I'm going to be told is that I'm bad, I'm sinful, and who wants to be told that for their whole lives?
Yeah.
I do think that is where the church starts losing people. I think that plants a seed early in children's lives, but I also think that kids are capable of understanding deeper level things than we give them credit for, and I think that's a place that the church could improve.
Yeah.
Is teaching kids that that's not the whole story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to be in systems that, even with great intentions, try to do healthy ego development. This is who we are, this is what we believe. And it's just, the truth is, it's really hard to define tribes without being exclusive to other things. And I think even people who try to do their best, we end up, passing on what we were given, which, to your point, from probably a place of really great intention, simplified it, and we ended up with this telling kids, good and bad, and kind of this painting with a broad brush.
Now, to the good part of it, I personally believe that all of that, the getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden, I think it was all part of the plan to begin with.
Yeah.
I think that if we never tasted the apple, if we never left, what's the point of free will?
Yeah.
What is the point of this whole big, beautiful world that God created if there was nobody there to experience and enjoy it?
Yeah.
So
that's called process theology, by the way. It's all good. It's all a part of the process. We're all figuring it out.
So we were given this opportunity, not just to be punished, but to learn and to grow, to strive for something better.
Yeah.
I think that in all of us, deep down, there is this memory of something better, something more beautiful. I think we can all agree that right now the world's on fire.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. But there is still beauty there. And instead of it being handed to us, though, we have to choose it.
Yeah.
We have to want it. I choose to be kind to other people because I want to share that beauty. I know it's there. And if other people can maybe see a little bit of it in me, then maybe they'll want to reach for that and strive for it also. I think the world is, even the parts that are on fire, I think are incredibly beautiful.
Some of them are burning bushes, if we look.
They are.
Yeah.
And I think I think right now we are being spoken to. We just sometimes don't understand what we're hearing. I know that, to the point Sharon was making earlier, being kind is hard.
Yeah.
And I already know I'm human. I'm going to screw up and I'm going to hurt people. I also know that I am probably going to get hurt again.
Yeah.
And I accept that. And if I have ever hurt anybody in here or to the people I have hurt, I will sincerely apologize and try to do better, because I think it's in the striving to be better and in the striving to get back to that beautiful place that's what being kind is about.
Man. Ladies and gentlemen, Megan Sister. I'm not going to insult you by preaching after that. Really, what I wanted to say is, I think the generous reading of the creation stories is that, the first and the last word from God about people is that we're very good. We're very good. I think God, in one theological perspective, what it takes for God to rest is trust in people. And what it takes for God to trust in people is God knowing that people are good. And to Megan's point, not perfect, growing up. I love a reading of the creation story that's falling from, naivete into consciousness, into an awareness that the world is not just fairies, but the world's good and bad. There is death, there is pain, but out of some of the hard times come some of the most beautiful things, and that from people come very, very good things. And you don't have to agree with that take, We're not asking you to choose good or bad of the creation stories. We need to bring our unique perspectives on who we are and how human beings function in the world, and we need to wrestle through topics like this. In a minute, we're going to close with a song from Mike Furlong. He sent it a little while ago, but the final lyric in this song is called Universal Sound. He says, "I've been up on the mountain and I've seen his glorious face." He's talking about God. "And I've sat there on the bar stool and I've looked him in his face." Or no, I've seen his glorious grace. I've looked him in the face. So you've got sort of God on the mountain. You've got the person on the bar stool. Part of what we're saying is that the choice to practice this perspective of kindness, the decision to see goodness in others, and to see goodness in yourself, that leads to the choice of kindness, and this is what Heather's going to get into next week, right? Living as if, even when we don't feel it, we're going to live as if. In the outcome of kindness, which is going to be the following week, again, don't believe me tonight, the data proves it. For us and for our tradition, this original goodness, this original sort of union or symmetry, this is incarnation, to see the face of God in the person on the bar stool, right? Not maybe in the glowing halo, transcendental, sparkles in their eyes, but in the bad breath, in the absence of teeth, in the frustration that they're asking you for money, to find God in the face of the person, whoever it is, on the bar stool, on the street, in this room, because, and this is the conviction of the practice, so that to receive or to show kindness from or to another creature is to relate in kindness to God. To receive or to show from or to God kindness, or to another creature, is to relate to God in kindness. To sit on the bar stool and look her in the face, so to speak. And maybe that's the beginning of our practice of kindness for this month, is to just remind ourselves that behind those eyes are God. The choice to believe in original goodness, in basic human kindness, is a choice, and this is a subtle distinction. It's a choice not to believe in that of God in everyone. The practice is to choose to find that of God in everyone, right? This is not a theological idea that you hold about all people ambiguously. It's a practice that requires in each interaction with each individual you encounter that you find that of God in that person. Again, boundaries, safety, all that stuff. We're better than we think we are. It benefits us to practice kindness. Kindness has real outcomes to make the world a better place, and it's really hard. All right, that's this month, right? Tonight, we're better than we fear we are. We are. We're good. The data says it. Heather will get into it a little bit next week. And Heather's going to ask you next week to choose to practice kindness, to live as if being kind is the best way, to have a bias toward kindness. The following week, I'll be back. We're going to talk about kindness outcomes, what the data says about how kindness actually changes not just us, but the world. And then the last week, we're just going to bitch about the fact that it's hard. And we're going to have to keep coming back, and that's what we're going to do. All right, we're going to come to this table as we do each week and receive the Eucharist. This is a symbol for us and for our tradition of the materiality of our faith. This is what we're talking about, getting our hands into the practice of kindness, the materiality of our faith and the humanity of God. A reminder that we ourselves are the body of Christ. We, as Christ's body, to be given, and we as Christ's blood to be shed. The table of this unconditional belonging and transformative love is set for us tonight. As always, it is open to us and to all people, and no one will ever be turned away. I believe Sharon's going to come and distribute the bread. If you'd like one, you can receive one from her. So come, let's share with one another this meal and these words. Bread for the journey and nourishment for the soul. Come when you're ready. You guys want to play along?
And as we move back towards some kind of normalcy, if you're comfortable,
Up
please
in
feel free to take a piece of bread and dip it in
in
the
the
cup.
cranberry glees.
Otherwise, you may take a
Ain't got bars
steel
nor the
cup,
charge to
dip it
call
in,
her
or use
anyway.
one of the
My
two
mind's a
packaged
mile a
supplements.
minute, and my thoughts they bark like hounds. I focus on my breathing and the universal sound. I think about my darling girl sleeping all alone. I pray the stars will shoot her all the wishes she can hold. On the day that I return, well, I aim to lay her down. But right now I am focused on the universal sound. I think about tobacco juice and mason jars of shine. I think about the vices I've let take me over time. I recall when I was a baby, I didn't need nothing around but a little bitty rattle and the universal sound. I close my eyes, it was all so clear. It was all right then, and it's all right here. I focus on my breathing and the universal sound. I let it take me over from the toenails to the crown of the body that I'm in, till they put me in the ground. And I return to the chorus of the universal sound. I've been up on the mountain, I've seen his wondrous grace. I've sat there on the bar stool and I've looked him in the face. He seemed a little haggard, but it did not slow him down. He was humming to the neon and the universal sound.
Thanks so much for joining us in person and online. Thanks again for making financial support a part of your practice at collectivegives.com, and make your plan to stay connected at wearecollectivechurch.com. You can update your preferences to customize your engagement. For benediction this evening is an excerpt of a letter written by Jack Kerouac. The world you see is just a movie in your mind. Rocks don't see it. Bless and sit down. Forgive and forget. Practice kindness all day to everybody, and you will realize you're already in heaven now. That's the story. That's the message. Nobody understands it. Nobody listens. They're all running around like chickens with heads cut off. I will try to teach it, but it will be in vain. So I'll end up in a shack praying and being cool and singing by my wood stove making pancakes.
Whew, sometimes that's how it goes. All right, look, it's 6:40, and I know that that's late. I know, but I also think we had a good time and we did the real thing tonight. So thanks for your patience while we're getting kind of back in the swing. Heather and I will have a conversation about real timelines for next week. So we'll finish well before 6:40. Let's bring our hands together as a symbol of our intention, first to our foreheads for clarity of thought, to our lips for clarity of speech, to our hearts for clarity of action, so that in all that we say and do, love would be our first thought, our first word, and our first deed. Grace and peace. Now let us put our hands to service in cleaning and clearing for our neighbors who practice here this week. Yoga's tomorrow night. Let's leave it better than we found it. Thanks, guys.